I'm Joan MacNaughton. I'm the Executive Chair of the World Energy Council Trilemma report. And the Trilemma is a series of policy analyses which look at how good countries are at delivering the three goals of what we call the Trilemma. That is to say, energy security, energy equity, by which we mean affordability and access to energy, and environmental sustainability.
And what were your conclusions of the report? How well are countries doing on these three factors?
All countries struggle, actually. There are some leaders of the pack. There are 5 countries who managed to get into the top 25 of our index for all 3 goals, but nobody gets into the top 15 for all 3. And basically, that's because you do need to have very, very good policy frameworks in order to deliver on these goals, and countries are still learning how to achieve the balance among the 3.
Give me the top 5. Who is going okay?
Well, there's Switzerland, Sweden, Canada, Denmark and the UK. I think, yes, not necessarily in that order, but Switzerland is number 1.
Okay, and why is it so important to achieve these goals on the Trilemma? What is the what lies in future for us if we fail?
Well, clearly you've got to have energy security, and all politicians want to ensure that their citizens have a good quality of life with access to energy, able to afford energy, and a lot of politicians understand the environmental challenge, that is to say climate change and also environmental pollution. What our report shows is that if you neglect one of these, it is then very much more difficult to retrieve the situation afterwards. So while countries have different emphases at different times, they really do need to try and achieve a balance. And why is that important? If you don't have your energy system sustainable, then you're not going to be able to deliver economic growth, you're not going to be able to deliver quality of life. And I worry that we are sleepwalking into the next too big to fail sector. And by that I mean if you don't have a climate policy framework, you're not going to have the change in investment behaviour, the change in business models that will create sustainable energy services for people. And we may end up with stranded assets, high carbon lock-in, which we then find we can't use because basically it's damaging the planet too much. We know this, and we need to put the policies in place now so that we can avoid the systemic risks which that path of ignoring the carbon impact of what you are doing, that path is causing that systemic risk.
Taking that into account, how do you feel about Poland looking at getting most of its electricity from coal in the future, even if it's calling it clean coal for now? Is it on the road to one big stranded asset?
If they were not to do anything about it, they would be. I'm happy to say that they seem to have seen the point. They are working very hard on a low emissions pathway. The question is, how quickly can they develop that and how successfully can they implement it? They're going to have a big push on energy efficiency. They're going to have a big push on power generation efficiency. And, you know, every time you increase your efficiency, you reduce the emissions for any given unit of power output. So they're good things to do. But they really have their work cut out, because at the moment they're 94 out of 129 countries for environmental sustainability, and they have a big legacy issue to tackle with coal. There is one thing they could do. They could begin to think seriously about applying carbon capture and storage to their coal power stations. And you know, you've asked the right question, because coal stations last for 50 to 60 years. So you've got to think about what's that asset going to be doing in the future. And the only way you can make that asset really compatible with a low carbon future is to apply carbon capture and storage, although in the short term, improving the efficiency will help.
To go back to the conclusion of your report, too big to fail is referring to the banking crisis, and a lot of people felt a lot of pain from that. So are we in danger of more pain in terms of the environment, which I guess you could argue was just as important as suffering from lack of cash?
Well, we know that people worry a lot about their environment and about the quality, and we know that people are impacted by severe weather events. So we've got to tackle this. We've got to tackle it, and it's a long-term problem because we've got such a big investment to make. And our report finds that until we have more certainty in the policy framework, businesses aren't going to be able to step up to the plate and make the right kind of investments on the scale that's needed. So that's why the lack of the climate policy framework constitutes really a systemic risk to the sustainability of our energy system.